All right, everyone. So I just came across a Reddit post where a gentleman asked, "What is the best deck to take on the deck in Swedish, old school?" And I want to show you guys my version of what I call the deck killer, which is a deck that I built solely to play against the deck. It's really good against the deck, but pretty shitty against everything else. But I thought I wanted to share it with you guys. Now, the deck's core strength is really card drawing. All right, the deck is a control deck of denial and removal with Swords to Plowshares, Counterspell, and Disenchant, which wants to just stop you in your tracks from putting any real big threat on the table, and then slowly playing out a JMD Tome and start drawing. And then with the card draw advantage with the Tome or the Library of Alexandria, obviously you get into a position where the deck is drawing too many cards and you will fall behind and the deck will slowly win until they pull out a Sarah Angel that's backed up by a few counter spells or a few Mishra's Factories after mind twisting you to 0, and they'll finish you off. So really, to win against the deck, you have to punish it for wanting to draw cards. So you got to put everything possible in its way to hurt it when it wants to draw cards. And there's no better card in old school than the Chains of Mephistopheles when it comes to drawing cards. This card is an enchantment from Legends. It'll automatically kill Library of Alexandria, Ancestral Recall, JMD Tome, and if they're playing with what's it called, Time Twister or maybe Wheel of Fortune, which is a bit less popular in the deck, but if they're playing one of those draw sevens, they're completely shut off. It also shuts off Brain Geyser. So pretty much all the card drawing advantage from the deck is gone when you play Chains of Mephistopheles. They still get to draw, but they got to discard first. So they could cycle through the deck, but they don't get the card advantage. So obviously, you would go with 4 of these in the deck. This is a threat. This is something they have to destroy. They cannot leave it there. Now, the second card that's going to punish them for always wanting to draw is another enchantment from Legends. And you got Underworld Dreams, which is going to cause a point of damage every turn. Plus, if they start drawing with Library of Alexandria or JMD Tome, this is really going to deplete the life total very quickly. So this is another card that they cannot leave on the table because it's eventually going to kill the deck. Now, the deck is a slow deck. It's a deck that wants to take its time. It's not a deck that's going to win on turn 5 or turn 6 or turn 7. The deck usually wins around turn 15 or 20. So the longer this card stays in play, the more damage it does. Now, another card that also, well, actually, there's 3 more sets of cards that you want to play that are going to cause points of damage every turn during the upkeep, accelerating the clock on the deck beyond Underworld Dreams. And it's the enchantment Warp Artifact, where it's going to cause 1 point of damage every upkeep to the player playing the deck. It's an enchant artifact, and obviously you're going to have a target turn 1 all the time. Like, people are going to say, yeah, but you need an artifact. Yeah, the deck has 5 Moxes and a Sol Ring that are always going to be there on turn 1, so you have an immediate target. You can't use this on the Lotus or the Chaos Orb, obviously, because they're going to sack it and you're going to lose your enchantment. And, well, you could also use it on JMD Tome, but if you have a chance to disenchant it or destroy it some other way, let's say with a Chaos Orb, I'd rather destroy it. But on any Mox, on any piece of jewelry, this works pretty well. Then you got another card that does 1 point of damage every turn for the deck. You rarely see this card in tournament competitive play, but it's Cursed Land. Same thing as Warp Artifact, but it's an enchant land instead of enchant artifact. And it does 1 point of damage every single turn. And finally, you got another card that does 1 point of damage every turn, which is the Copper Tablet. I like to call it the weaker version of the Warp Artifact because you also take a point of damage. But it's not that much of a deal if you're playing against the deck because, like I said, the deck is not an aggressive deck. Besides the Mishra's Factories, there's not much that's going to hurt you quickly every turn. So you have time to take damage. It's going to hurt the deck more than it hurts you. Now, I don't know if you notice here, but there's no creatures here. These are all, there's 16 cards that do a point of damage every turn. Underworld Dreams even more depending on how many cards they draw, but it's at least 1 point of damage every turn. But unlike, let's say, a Goblin deck, these ones cannot be Sword to Plowshare. They cannot be targeted by the Abyss. They cannot be destroyed by Balance. They cannot be destroyed by Wrath of God. These cards can only be destroyed by Disenchant. And that's the problem the deck is going to face, is that they've only got 4 Disenchants and 5 counter spells, 4 counter spells and a mana drain. But that's 9 cards to remove 20 threats. And these are all cards that eventually they're going to have to remove. They can't leave these cards into play. So the whole point of this deck is to take, to really stress the fact that these are all enchantments and your opponent only has 4 disenchants. Now, my deck, I mean, besides the Mishra's Factories, this deck is a creatureless deck. So there's no creatures in here. So the 4 Swords to Plowshares and the Abyss that the deck plays with are completely irrelevant. Those are dead cards. It's really dead wood. Now, you could argue, yes, the Swords to Plowshares are going to hurt the factories, but if you play them right and you wait for your opponent to discard the Swords to Plowshares with the chains, or if you mind twist them, or with another card that I'm going to show you, if they get rid of their, whatchamacallit, Swords to Plowshares, your factories basically, they're safe. Now there's another card. Now I'm going to show you a series of cards that the deck has to counter or disenchant immediately. These are cards that the deck cannot accept on the battlefield or just being cast, because they will ultimately destroy the deck. Number 1, Disrupting Scepter. If you play this, the deck's going to counter it, or it's going to have to disenchant. It's going to have to do something for this because it's an immediate threat. So throw one of those inside. Obviously, second one, Mind Twist. The deck is going to have to counter this. They have no choice, or else, you know what happens. They lose everything. Now, Ancestral Recall. Ancestral Recall is a bit tricky, because if Chain's in play, you could use Ancestral Recall for yourself, but obviously it's going to be weakened because Chains is in place, so you're going to have to cycle through cards. But if you could play it before the Chains is there, obviously your opponent's going to want to counter this. Now, what's good about this card is if you have 2 Chains in play and you play it on your opponent's going to have to discard 2 cards, draw, discard 2 cards, draw, discard 2 cards, draw. So it's like a small Mind Twist. So they're going to have to counter it again if you have 2 Chains in play. So depending on the situation, Ancestral Recall could be really good, depending on how you play it, depending on how many Chains you have in play. Now, the 4th card that your opponent's going to have to counter or disenchant is a Tome. Obviously, he's not going to want you to take card advantage. Again, if there's a Chains of Mephistopheles into play, you could always cycle through your deck and discard lands, because you don't need that many lands in this deck to play. So you discard lands and you just keep on playing the rest. Another card that your opponent's going to have to counter, or I guess counter the card that you're going to go get with, is Recall. Recall, again, is a card that's going to make you come and get one of these threats and get rid of a basic land. So your opponent's going to have to stop this. Chaos Orb, I guess, also is it's not really that much of a threat unless you target one of his tomes or the Library of Alexandria. But then again, your opponent usually is going to disenchant this, but it's not that much of a threat like these 5. Then you got Demonic Tutor. Obviously, this is a card that's going to be countered unless, well, actually, they're going to counter the cards you're going to go pick up with the Demonic Tutor, unless there's a Library of Alexandria on the floor and you have no Chains or Underworld Dreams, and your opponent has reason to believe that you're going to go get a Strip Mine to destroy the Library of Alexandria. Well, then they're going to counter Demonic Tutor. Throw in a Mana Drain, obviously, for all good reasons. This is the only counter spell I have in the deck. I don't put any counter spells, because this is more of an aggressive deck where you just want to pump out threat after threat. This is just like one card that might help you play one of the artifacts, or maybe the Mind Twist right after this one. So that's why I just included the Mana Drain. Time Walk. This is not a threat for your opponent, unless really you have the Time Walk. I mean, attack twice with Mishra's Factories, but I mean, everything here happens pretty much in your opponent's upkeep. So it's not a threat, but it's a filler. It's an extra card. It's an extra land drop. There's no reason not to put this in a deck. Another card that's not that much of a threat, but you need is Time Twister. Again, if there's an Underworld Dreams on the floor and there's no chains, your opponent's going to take 7 points of damage. If there's a chains, you're going to discard his entire hand. It's a 50-50 card. Sometimes it's really worth it to play it, sometimes not, but I decided to include it. I decided to include one Maze of It. This is usually for that Lonely Sarah Angel that the deck uses as a win condition, and it's uncounterable. I used to play IC Manipulator, but I changed it for Maze of It because I find it's a better stopper, because the IC could be disenchanted or counterspell. This can't. And lastly, the only white card in the deck is Balance. And I'll tell you at the end of the turn, at the end of the deck, I'll tell you why I use this card, all right? Now, there's 4 more cards here. For the mana, we got the Underground Seas, black and blue. We got the cheap Underground Seas, where we take a point of damage, but it's not that bad, like I said, because the deck is not an aggro deck, so it gives us time. We got 3 islands, 2 swamps, 3 swamps, and a plain. This is my color base. Then for my more color base is Lotus, white, blue, black. I use the rest of the Moxes for colorless mana. You want Moxes because you want speed. If you could play a Chains of Mephistopheles right away, if you're on the play on turn 1, you're going to want quick mana. Obviously, library to draw cards. Your opponent's going to have to destroy this. It's a threat. Strip Mine for the library. And for Mishra's Factories to block your opponent's Mishra's Factories at the beginning of the game if he decides to go aggressive on you. Or at the end of the game after a balance or after a Mind Twist. If you want to start attacking with the Mishras, you can go with the Mishras. And finally, the 4 cards that I have here are Dark Rituals. And the reason why I add the Dark Rituals is because, again, you want speed. If you happen to play on turn 1 and you get a Mind Twist with a Dark Ritual, you know, that's a lot of damage. With a Mox or with a Lotus or a Sol Ring, it's a lot of damage right here. If you get to play Dark Ritual turn 1 or turn 2, with a balance, you can get rid of 2 cards, put a Mox, put a land, 2 Dark Rituals. Next thing you know, your opponent's got to discard most of his hand. Also, Dark Ritual helps if you have a dead Dark Ritual in your hands. You could use it, to activate a tome to draw a card, or you could use it also with the Disrupting Scepter if you need extra mana. I mean, it's always good for acceleration for the Dark Ritual. I'm not crazy about the turn 1 Dark Ritual and Underworld Dreams, because if your opponent disenchants it, well, you just lost 2 cards. But if you just happen to come across a Swamp, a Dark Ritual, Underworld Dreams, turn 1, and a Lotus and a Twister, I mean, it's a lot of cards, but I've seen it many times. Turn 1 Twister, and your opponent takes 7 points of damage. You know, it's pretty much of a good combo. So basically, this deck right here, I find works very, very well against the deck, because the deck only has 4 disenchants, like I said, and 5 counter spells. These are all threats, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 20 cards, the deck's got to get rid of. And I would say the 4 first ones here, the deck's got to find a way. Even the 5 first ones, the deck's got to counter spell these cards or disenchant them. You cannot leave them there because they're going to have a lot of trouble. Whatever's here is questionable. But they're good cards. So it's really an aggressive deck to play against the deck. What's going to happen here is that this deck here is actually, I reversed engineered this deck. This is the deck that I would sideboard into if I were playing the deck. But the question is, then you have to build this deck, take out the cards where you would start off against any other deck, because against any other deck, this really sucks. So I would, let's say, take out all of the enchantments that cause 1 point of damage and really go with a lot of creatures. So you start out with that deck against any deck that you would play. And then if you happen to come across a control deck or the deck, you just swap out all of the creatures and you put this stuff in. Now, on the first game, your opponent's still most probably going to keep the 4 Swords, the Plowshares, and the Abyss. So they're going to have dead wood in their hands. Now, if they realize what you just did after game 2, that you're certainly going to win, they're most probably going to take out the Swords, the Plowshares, and the Abyss and put in other stuff or whatever. But you get the idea. So on the 3rd game, your opponent doesn't know exactly if you're going with the creatures again or with this. I would keep going with this, or maybe slip in 1 or 2 creatures, maybe some Hypnotic Specters, which I would have in my main deck, because those hurt the deck a lot. And again, those are threats that have to be answered immediately. But I mean, as a sideboard, once you sideboard into this deck and you play against the deck, you do very well. I think my last 6 games that I played against the deck, I won 5. Now, 2 of those 5 games were, what's the, Eternal Central rules? The one that you could play with the Fallen Empires. So I had 4 hymns instead of some cards in here. That was even stronger if you could play Fallen Empires. But if you can't, you take out the hymns and you put, something else here. But this is a really good build against the deck. And, give it a try. All right, I hope you like this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.